Margaret Thompson never thought silence could sound so loud. The kind of silence that follows disbelief, that hangs in the air like smoke after a gunshot. The kind of silence that makes grown men question everything they thought they knew about. Strength, about skill, about judging a book by its cover. 15 minutes ago, she was just another middle-aged librarian who had wandered into the wrong place at the wrong time. A woman in sensible shoes and a cardigan, clutching a thermos of tea like it was her lifeline. Someone to dismiss, to overlook, to politely suggest should find somewhere else to be. Now the electronic scoreboard displays 3 perfect 10s in. Digital glory, 300 points, perfect score. The kind of shooting that legends are built on, achieved by hands that seemed more suited to turning pages than pulling triggers. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The men who laughed 5 minutes ago now stare at that scoreboard, like it's displaying alien hieroglyphics. Their confident smirks have evaporated faster than morning dew, replaced by expressions that cycle between confusion, disbelief, and something approaching respect. Margaret sets the rifle down with practiced precision, removes her safety glasses with steady hands, and turns to face a crowd that suddenly finds their shoes fascinating. Her gray hair, escaping from its modest bun, catches the afternoon light, filtering through the range windows. She looks exactly the same as when she arrived, unremarkable, forgettable, invisible. But that scoreboard tells a different story. The Riverside County Gun Range sits on the outskirts of Millbrook like a fortress of testosterone and tradition. Concrete walls painted in military green bear the scars of decades worth of brass casings and mail bonding. American flags hang motionless. In the still air, silent witnesses to countless displays of marksmanship and machismo. Saturday afternoons bring out the regulars like clockwork. Men who measure their worth in groupings and talk about their rifles like other people discuss their children. They gather in clusters around the parking lot, comparing equipment with the intensity of surgeons discussing scalpels. Chrome barrels gleam under fluorescent lights. Custom grips bear the fingerprints of countless practice sessions. Scopes cost more than most people's cars. The range master, Eddie Boo Morrison, has presided over this domain for 23 years. Built like a refrigerator with arms, he wears his authority like body armor. His voice carries the weight of someone who's forgotten more about firearms than most people will ever learn. Veterans nod respectfully when he speaks. Newcomers quickly learn that his word is law within these walls. The afternoon competition draws the usual suspects. Men who've been coming here since Bush was president, the first Bush. They know each other's shooting quirks better than their wives know their anniversary dates. Tommy Rodriguez, insurance adjuster by day, sharpshooter by weekend, claims he can hit a dime at 100 yards, and usually can. Frank Jensen, retired mechanic whose hands shake from too much coffee, but steady perfectly when wrapped around a rifle stock. Mike Patterson, construction foreman who treats his custom 308 like a holy relic. These men have carved out their hierarchy through years of friendly competition and not-so-friendly bragging rights. They've established their pecking order through accumulated scores and shared stories of near misses and perfect shots. Newcomers are welcomed with the kind of enthusiasm reserved for tax auditors and dental procedures. Margaret Thompson's Honda Civic putters into the parking lot like a lost tourist asking for directions. The engine makes sounds that suggest it's held together by hope and regular oil changes. She parks between a lifted Ford pickup that could crush her car like a beer can and a Harley-Davidson that costs more than her annual salary. The contrast is immediate and jarring. Margaret emerges from her vehicle wearing the kind of outfit that screams substitute teacher or church volunteer. Navy blue cardigan buttoned to the neck despite the warm weather. Sensible walking shoes that prioritize comfort over style. Reading glasses hanging from a chain that her grandmother probably gave her. She carries a worn leather purse that's seen better decades, and a thermos that suggests she's prepared for a lengthy stay. Her appearance draws immediate attention from the parking lot congregation. Not the good kind of attention reserved for fellow enthusiasts or potential converts to their hobby. The kind of attention usually directed at people who've wandered into the wrong movie theater or accidentally crashed a bachelor party. Tommy Rodriguez elbows Frank Jensen in the ribs, the universal male signal for "check this out." Frank glances up from cleaning his rifle scope and does a double take that would be comical if it weren't so transparent. Mike Patterson, adjusting the sling on his precision rifle, stops mid-motion like someone hit his pause button. Margaret seems oblivious to the stares as she approaches the range entrance. Her steps are measured and purposeful, neither hurried nor hesitant. She reads the posted rules with the attention of someone who actually intends to follow them, unlike the regulars who could recite them in their sleep, but frequently ignore the ones about proper ear protection and keeping their opinions to themselves. The front desk clerk, a college kid named Danny who works weekends to fund his gaming habit, looks up from his phone with the expression of someone who's about to deliver bad news. Danny's part-time position has taught him to recognize the obvious misunderstandings that walk through their doors. Lost hunters looking for sporting goods stores. Worried mothers tracking down wayward teenagers. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Occasionally, actual criminals who watch too many action movies. Margaret approaches the counter with the confidence of someone who belongs exactly where she is. Her voice, when she speaks, carries the authority of someone accustomed to being heard in quiet rooms. Professional and clear, without the hesitation that usually accompanies first-time visitors. "I'd like to use the rifle range, please." 1 hour should be sufficient. Danny blinks twice, his brain struggling to process the disconnect between appearance and intention. His customer service training wars with his natural instinct to suggest alternative activities. Libraries, perhaps. Garden centers. Anywhere that doesn't involve high-powered weapons and potential lawsuits. "Ma'am, are you sure you're in the right place? We're a shooting range, not a..." He trails off, realizing there's no polite way to complete that sentence without insulting a paying customer. Margaret's response carries the patience of someone who's had this conversation before, in different contexts but with identical undertones. "Yes, I'm quite certain. I have my license and identification." She produces documents from her purse. With practiced efficiency. Valid firearms license, current as of last month. State identification confirming her identity as Margaret Louise Thompson, age 53, resident of Millbrook. Everything properly endorsed and legally binding. Danny examines the paperwork like he's investigating a potential forgery. The license appears legitimate, bearing the official seals and signatures that his minimal training taught him to recognize. But the cognitive dissonance remains overwhelming. This woman looks like she should be organizing book clubs, not requesting access to military-grade weaponry. "Do you have your own equipment, or will you need to rent?" Danny's question comes out more cautious than professional, like he's asking someone if they're sure they want to swim with sharks. Margaret's response comes without hesitation. "I'll need to rent a rifle and purchase ammunition. Something suitable for precision shooting at 100 yards would be ideal." The specificity of her request catches Danny off guard. Most first-time visitors ask for something simple or let the experts make recommendations. They don't walk in with precise technical requirements like they're ordering office supplies. Her knowledge of range terminology suggests familiarity that doesn't match her appearance. Danny glances toward the parking lot, where the regular customers are pretending not to watch while obviously cataloging every detail of this unprecedented situation. Their body language screams curiosity mixed with skepticism. Tommy Rodriguez has his phone out, probably texting his shooting buddies about the entertainment that just walked in. The rental process takes longer than usual as Danny explains safety procedures with exaggerated care. He demonstrates proper handling techniques like he's teaching advanced physics to a kindergarten class. Margaret listens politely, nodding at appropriate intervals, asking no questions that might reveal her actual knowledge level. Bull Morrison emerges from his office like a bear investigating unusual noises in his territory. His expression cycles through confusion, concern, and barely concealed amusement as he absorbs the scene playing out at his front desk. 23 years of range management has exposed him to every variety of customer, from nervous beginners to overconfident amateurs to genuinely dangerous individuals who shouldn't be trusted with sharp pencils, let alone firearms. Margaret Thompson doesn't fit any of his established categories. She's neither nervous nor overconfident. She displays no obvious signs of mental instability or criminal intent. She simply appears to be a middle-aged woman who wants to shoot rifles with the same matter-of-fact attitude most people reserve for grocery shopping. "Everything all right here, Danny?" Bull's question carries the weight of authority mixed with protective instinct. His range, his rules, his responsibility if anything goes sideways. Margaret turns to face him with the composure of someone accustomed to dealing with skeptical authority figures. Her smile is polite but not subservient, professional but not cold. "Good afternoon. I was just arranging to use your rifle range for some practice shooting." Bull studies her like a diagnostician examining symptoms that don't match any known disease. His experience with firearms enthusiasts has taught him to read people quickly and accurately. Dangerous individuals usually telegraph their instability through nervous energy or aggressive posturing. Inexperienced shooters reveal themselves through endless questions or obvious anxiety. Margaret displays neither warning sign. Her body language suggests comfort with her environment rather than intimidation. Her questions focus on logistics rather than basic safety, implying knowledge she hasn't yet demonstrated. But her appearance screams suburban normalcy with the volume turned to maximum. "Ma'am, I don't mean to be presumptuous, but have you done much shooting before? We like to make sure our customers are properly prepared for what can be a pretty intense experience." Margaret's response comes with the patience of someone who's answered similar questions throughout her life. Teachers questioning her ability to handle difficult students. Mechanics assuming she doesn't understand automotive basics. Store clerks directing her toward products she hasn't requested. "I appreciate your concern for safety. I understand this is a controlled environment that requires proper respect for both equipment and procedures. I assure you I'll follow all range rules and regulations." Her answer acknowledges his authority while subtly deflecting his underlying question. She's neither claimed expertise nor admitted inexperience, threading a diplomatic needle that keeps her options open while satisfying his immediate concerns. Bull exchanges glances with Danny, a wordless conversation between experienced professionals. They've handled unusual situations before, from celebrities trying to fulfill action, movie fantasies to elderly hunters maintaining traditions that predate their grandchildren. But Margaret represents uncharted territory. Danny completes the paperwork with administrative precision while Bull observes Margaret's behavior for any red flags that might justify refusing service. She reviews the liability waivers with the attention of someone who actually reads terms and conditions. Her signature appears confident and practiced. She handles the rental rifle with respect rather than fear, checking the action and sights with motions that suggest familiarity. The selected weapon is a Remington 700 in .308 caliber, a precision instrument favored by serious marksmen and professional snipers alike. Not the weapon typically chosen by casual shooters or nervous beginners. Margaret accepts it with the same matter-of-fact attitude she might reserve for accepting a library book. The ammunition selection proves equally revealing. She requests match-grade cartridges designed for accuracy rather than the standard hunting rounds most customers prefer. Her knowledge of grain weights and ballistic coefficients suggests understanding that extends beyond casual interest. Tommy Rodriguez, Frank Jensen, and Mike Patterson have abandoned any pretense of minding their own business. They cluster near the range entrance like spectators at a traffic accident. Drawn by morbid curiosity about the impending disaster, they're whispered. Conversations carry the tone of experienced professionals preparing to witness amateur hour. $20 says she can't hit the target at 50 yards. Tommy mutters to his companions, pulling out his wallet with theatrical confidence. Frank Jensen shakes his head with the wisdom of someone who's seen overconfidence punished before. I'll take that bet, but I'm wagering she doesn't make it through 5 shots before getting scared by the recoil. Mike Patterson, ever the construction foreman, approaches the situation with practical analysis. Look at her stance, guys. She's holding that rifle like she's never seen one before. This is going to be educational for all the wrong reasons. Their commentary carries the casual cruelty of men who've never questioned their own assumptions about competence and belonging. They've claimed this space as their domain through years of consistent performance and mutual recognition. Outsiders, especially unexpected outsiders, represent challenges to their established order that must be quickly categorized and dismissed. Margaret proceeds to the firing line with measured steps that suggest neither eagerness nor reluctance. She selects lane 7, positioned between 2 empty stations that provide maximum separation from other shooters. Her choice reveals tactical thinking that prioritizes safety and minimizes distractions. The setup process takes longer than the observers expect. Margaret adjusts the bench rest with mechanical precision, testing stability and height until the configuration meets her exacting standards. She arranges her ammunition with orderly spacing that suggests systematic approach rather than casual preparation. Bull Morrison positions himself at the range, master's station where he can observe all activities while maintaining authority over range operations. His expression remains professionally neutral, but his body language betrays heightened attention. Unusual situations require increased vigilance, and Margaret Thompson definitely qualifies as unusual. The safety briefing proceeds with standard protocols, despite Margaret's apparent familiarity with range procedures. Bull explains commands for ceasefire, hot range, and emergency situations with the thoroughness required by insurance regulations and common sense. Margaret listens attentively, asking clarifying questions that demonstrate understanding rather than confusion. Range commands are absolute, Bull emphasizes, his voice carrying across the shooting bays. When I call ceasefire, everything stops. Immediately, no exceptions, no delays, no discussion. Margaret nods acknowledgement while checking the rifle's action one final time. Her movements remain economical and purposeful, wasting no motion on unnecessary flourishes or nervous adjustments. She's positioned her body behind the rifle with alignment that suggests knowledge of proper shooting fundamentals. The regulars have positioned themselves in adjacent lanes where they can observe while maintaining plausible deniability about their voyeuristic intentions. Tommy Rodriguez loads his custom F-15 with exaggerated precision, hoping to demonstrate proper technique through passive-aggressive instruction. Frank Jensen adjusts his scope with theatrical care, positioning himself for maximum viewing angle of Margaret's inevitable struggles. The electronic target system activates with digital efficiency, displaying scoring zones that will record every impact with unforgiving accuracy. 100 yards downrange, the paper targets await their first shots like blank canvases prepared for artistic expression or vandalism, depending on the shooter's skill level. Margaret settles behind her rifle with movements that flow together like water finding its level. Her breathing becomes deeper and more controlled, the measured rhythm of someone preparing for precise work. She adjusts the scope with small, incremental changes that suggest understanding of windage and elevation principles. The first shot announcement echoes across the range with Bull's familiar authority. Range is hot. Commence firing when ready. Tommy Rodriguez, Frank Jensen, and Mike Patterson prepare their weapons with competitive urgency, eager to establish their dominance through superior performance. They've planned this demonstration for Margaret's benefit, hoping to illustrate the difference between amateur enthusiasm and professional competence. Margaret makes final adjustments to her position, with the deliberate care of someone who understands that preparation determines outcome. Her breathing continues its controlled pattern as she aligns the rifle sights with methodical precision. The trigger finger finds its position with practiced economy of motion. The waiting becomes palpable as observers prepare for entertainment. That confirms their assumptions about competence and belonging. They expect nervous fumbling, poor technique, and mediocre results that will justify their initial skepticism. They've mentally prepared their encouraging but condescending comments for after the inevitable disappointment. Margaret's finger begins, applying pressure to the trigger with the gradual increase that precision shooting demands. Her body remains motionless except for the controlled compression that will release the carefully aimed shot. The observers lean forward slightly, anticipating the confirmation of their expectations. The rifle fires with sharp authority that echoes through the indoor range like thunder in a canyon. The recoil, substantial enough to challenge experienced shooters, disappears into Margaret's steady frame without disturbing her position or concentration. She works the bolt action with smooth efficiency, ejecting the spent cartridge and chambering the next round. Downrange, the electronic scoring system processes the impact data with digital precision. The results appear on overhead monitors, visible throughout the facility, displaying information that causes Bull Morrison to blink twice and check his equipment for malfunction. 10. Perfect center. 100-yard bullseye with surgical precision. The silence that follows sounds different from the usual range quiet. This silence carries weight, the kind that suggests fundamental assumptions being challenged and found wanting. Tommy Rodriguez stops mid-motion while loading his magazine. Frank Jensen's scope adjustments become suddenly less theatrical. Mike Patterson's confident expression shifts toward uncertainty. Margaret chambers the second round with the same mechanical efficiency, her concentration unbroken by the minor miracle she's just performed. Her breathing remains controlled, her position unchanged, her focus absolute. The observers realize they're witnessing something that doesn't fit their predetermined categories. The second shot follows with identical precision, the rifle report echoing off concrete walls that have absorbed thousands of similar sounds, but few with such devastating accuracy. Margaret's form remains textbook perfect as she cycles the action and prepares for the third shot. The electronic scoreboard updates with ruthless efficiency. 10. Another perfect score that defies statistical probability and challenges every assumption the observers have made about competence and appearance. Bull Morrison reaches for his binoculars with the expression of someone investigating a potential hoax. Through high-powered optics, the target tells its story in clean holes punched through paper with surgical precision. 2 shots, 2 perfect 10s, grouping tight enough to cover with a quarter. The third shot adds to the growing legend being written in real time. Margaret's technique remains flawless as she sends the final round down range with confidence born from knowledge rather than hope. The recoil, the cycling of the action, the preparation for assessment, everything flows with practiced efficiency that speaks of extensive experience. The final score appears on the monitors like a verdict, delivered by an impartial jury. 10. 3 shots, 3 perfect scores, grouping that would make professional marksmen weep with envy. Margaret sets the rifle down with the same careful precision she's displayed throughout the exercise. She removes her safety glasses and ear protection with methodical care, then turns to face an audience that suddenly finds their previous certainty evaporating like morning mist. 300 points, perfect score. The kind of shooting that builds reputations and destroys assumptions with equal efficiency. The silence stretches between them like a chasm that separates certainty from confusion, knowledge from presumption, appearance from reality. Margaret Thompson, middle-aged librarian in sensible shoes and modest cardigan, has just delivered a masterclass in precision marksmanship that challenges everything the observers thought they knew about talent and capability. Tommy Rodriguez stares at his own target, where his carefully aimed shots have produced a respectable but hardly spectacular grouping. His $20 bet suddenly feels like pocket change compared to the cost of his shattered confidence. Frank Jensen's hands have developed a slight tremor that has nothing to do with excessive caffeine consumption. His years of weekend warrior experience feel inadequate when measured against the clinical precision he's just witnessed. Mike Patterson, construction foreman accustomed to being the expert in any room he enters, finds himself questioning assumptions he's held for decades about competence and credibility. Bull Morrison approaches Margaret with the expression of someone who's discovered that everything he thought he knew about his business was incomplete. 23 years of range management experience has taught him to recognize exceptional shooting when he sees it, but it hasn't prepared him for exceptional shooting delivered by someone who appears to have wandered in from a different universe entirely. Margaret packs her equipment with the same methodical care she's displayed throughout the exercise. The thermos of tea that seemed so incongruous an hour ago now appears to be the accessory of someone who came prepared for exactly what she accomplished. The questions that follow will reveal layers of complexity hidden beneath her unremarkable exterior. The story that emerges will challenge every assumption about capability and appearance that the observers have carried into this moment. But that revelation waits in the silence that follows perfection, in the space between expectation and reality, in the moment when ordinary becomes extraordinary and quiet competence speaks louder than any boast or swagger could ever manage. Margaret Thompson has just rewritten the rules of engagement at the Riverside County Gun Range, and nobody, including Margaret herself, knows quite what comes next. The uncomfortable silence stretches like a taut wire ready to snap. Tommy Rodriguez breaks it first, his voice carrying the forced joviality of someone trying to maintain control of a situation that's clearly spiraled beyond his understanding. Well, I'll be damned. Beginner's luck is a hell of a thing, isn't it? The words hang in the air with all the conviction of a politician's campaign promise. Even Tommy seems to realize how hollow they sound as soon as they escape his lips. Beginner's luck doesn't produce 3 consecutive perfect shots at 100 yards. Beginner's luck doesn't create groupings that could be covered by a dime. Margaret continues organizing her equipment with the methodical precision of someone who's performed this routine thousands of times. She doesn't acknowledge Tommy's comment, doesn't defend her performance, doesn't offer explanations or justifications. Her silence becomes its own form of communication, speaking volumes about confidence that requires no external validation. Frank Jensen steps forward with the aggressive posture of someone whose worldview has just been challenged by inconvenient facts. His weekend warrior credentials, earned through years of consistent range attendance and moderate success, suddenly feel inadequate when measured against clinical perfection delivered without apparent effort. Lucky shots happen to everyone. Frank announces with the authority of someone declaring the earth flat. The real test is consistency. Anyone can get lucky once, but can you do it again? Margaret looks up from her equipment case with the patient expression of a teacher addressing a particularly slow student. Her response, when it comes, carries the weight of someone who's had this conversation before, in different contexts with identical underlying assumptions. Would you like me to demonstrate consistency? The question appears simple enough on its surface, but something in Margaret's tone suggests depths that the observers haven't yet begun to fathom. It's not a defensive response or an eager acceptance of a challenge. It's the calm inquiry of someone offering to prove a point that probably doesn't need proving. Frank's aggressive posture falters slightly as he realizes he stepped into territory he may not want to explore. But pride and masculine ego create momentum that's difficult to reverse, especially with an audience of peers watching for any sign of backing down. I think that would be educational for everyone involved, Frank responds, doubling down on assumptions that feel increasingly shaky. One good group doesn't make a marksman. Let's see what you can do with a real challenge. Margaret's response comes without hesitation or apparent concern about the escalating stakes. What did you have in mind? The calmness of her acceptance unnerves Frank more than defensive anger would have. He'd prepared for arguments, justifications, or nervous laughter. Instead, he's facing someone who appears genuinely curious about whatever test he might propose, as if his challenge represents an interesting problem to solve rather than a threat to her credibility. Mike Patterson, sensing an opportunity to demonstrate leadership in an increasingly confusing situation, steps forward with the commanding presence that served him well in construction management. His voice carries the authority of someone accustomed to being the expert in any technical discussion. How about we make this interesting? 5 shots at 200 yards. That'll separate the wheat from the chaff real quick. At that distance, every little mistake gets magnified. Wind becomes a factor. Breathing matters. Equipment limitations show up fast. Margaret considers the proposal with the analytical approach of someone evaluating a work assignment rather than a personal challenge. Her expression remains neutral as she weighs variables that the observers can only guess at. Wind conditions, ammunition ballistics, scope adjustments, and dozens of other factors that separate casual shooting from precision marksmanship. 200 yards would require scope adjustments for the longer distance, Margaret observed with the matter-of-fact tone of someone discussing lunch plans. The rental rifle may not have sufficient elevation adjustment for optimal performance at that range. Her technical knowledge catches the observers off guard again. Most casual shooters would worry about their own limitations at extended distances. Margaret's concern focuses on equipment capabilities, suggesting confidence in her own abilities that extends well beyond the range of beginner's luck. Bull Morrison, who's been observing this exchange with growing fascination, steps forward. With the authority of someone whose opinion carries weight in this environment. 23 years of range. Management has exposed him to every variety of shooting challenge and personal drama that firearms enthusiasts can generate. The rifle's good to 300 yards with proper adjustment, Bull announces with professional certainty. I can set it up for 200 if you're serious about this demonstration. Margaret nods acceptance while the male observers exchange glances that telegraph their growing uncertainty. What started as an opportunity to put an interloper in her proper place has evolved into something that feels increasingly like a trap they've built for themselves. Tommy Rodriguez attempts to inject humor into the rising tension with the desperate cheerfulness of someone trying to defuse a bomb using comedy. Hey, no pressure or anything. It's not like we're keeping score or placing bets or anything like that. The nervous laughter that follows his comment sounds forced and hollow. Everyone present understands that score is exactly what they're keeping, even if the metrics extend beyond simple marksmanship into territory involving pride, assumptions, and social hierarchy. Margaret accepts the rifle back from Bull Morrison with the same calm efficiency she's displayed throughout the encounter. Her hands move over the adjustments with practiced familiarity as she compensates for the extended distance. The scope changes require mathematical calculations that she performs mentally, without consultation or hesitation. The observers cluster together like witnesses at an execution, uncertain whether they're about to watch triumph or disaster, but equally unable to look away. Their confidence in predetermined outcomes has been shaken by Margaret's initial performance, But 200 yards represents a significant escalation in difficulty that should restore natural order to their universe. Frank Jensen positions himself at an adjacent firing position with obvious intent to provide comparative context for whatever Margaret might achieve. His own rifle, a custom precision instrument that cost more than many people's monthly salary, should provide significant advantages in any head-to-head comparison. "I'll shoot alongside you," Frank announces with renewed confidence. "Give everyone a baseline to judge performance against." No offense, but at this distance, equipment and experience make all the difference. Margaret's response comes without apparent ego or defensive posturing. "That seems reasonable. Should we use the same target type, or do you prefer different scoring systems?" Her willingness to accept direct comparison surprises Frank, who'd expected protests about fairness or requests for handicaps that would acknowledge her amateur status. Instead, she's treating his challenge like a collaborative exercise rather than a competitive confrontation. Mike Patterson takes charge of the logistics with supervisory efficiency that reflects his construction background. Standard precision. Targets, 5 shots each, best score wins. Boole can observe and verify results to keep everything official. The formality of the arrangement transforms what started as casual range time into something approaching an official match. Other shooters in adjacent lanes become aware of the developing drama and begin gravitating toward the spectacle, with the inevitable human attraction to potential conflict. Margaret prepares for the extended distance shooting with methodical care that contrasts sharply with the observer's growing agitation. She checks wind conditions through subtle observation of range flags and dust motes in the afternoon light. Her breathing becomes deeper and more controlled as she enters the focused state that precision shooting demands. Frank Jensen's preparation involves significantly more equipment adjustment and nervous energy. His custom rifle receives careful attention as he fine-tunes settings that should provide every possible advantage. His movements carry the urgency of someone who understands that his reputation depends on superior performance in this impromptu competition. The gallery of observers has grown to include several other range patrons who've abandoned their own shooting to witness whatever unfolds between the middle-aged woman and the established regular. Their whispered conversations create background noise that sounds like wind through leaves, carrying speculation and judgment in equal measure. Bull Morrison positions himself where he can observe both shooters while maintaining range safety protocols. His expression has evolved from polite skepticism to genuine curiosity about what he's about to witness. 23 years of experience has taught him to recognize exceptional events before they fully manifest. Margaret settles behind her rifle, with the fluid economy of motion that characterized her earlier performance. Her position appears comfortable and natural, without the visible tension that affects many shooters attempting to exceed their normal capabilities. She aligns the crosshairs with mathematical precision while compensating for distance, wind, and atmospheric conditions. Frank Jensen's position beside her displays considerably more effort and adjustment. His breathing appears shallow and irregular compared to Margaret's controlled rhythm. His grip on the custom rifle shows white knuckles that suggest nervous tension rather than confident control. The electronic scoring system activates for the extended distance challenge, displaying digital readouts that will record every impact. With unforgiving accuracy, 200 yards downrange, fresh targets await their test with blank surfaces that will soon tell stories of success or failure. Margaret's first shot at the extended distance carries the same authoritative report that characterized her earlier performance. The rifle recoil disappears into her steady frame without disrupting her position or concentration. She cycles the bolt action with practiced efficiency while maintaining sight alignment for rapid follow-up shots. Frank Jensen's first shot follows immediately, the custom rifle producing a sharper crack that reflects its precision engineering and expensive ammunition. His form appears technically correct, But subtle signs of tension suggest the pressure he's feeling to demonstrate superior performance. The electronic scoring system processes both impacts with digital efficiency. The results appear on overhead monitors where the growing audience can observe the developing contest between established regular and mysterious newcomer. Margaret's shot registers as a 9, missing perfect center by margins measured in fractions of inches. At 200 yards, such accuracy represents exceptional marksmanship that would satisfy most precision shooters. Frank Jensen's impact scores an 8, respectable performance that would normally generate satisfaction, but feels inadequate in current context. The second round of shots continues the pattern, with Margaret maintaining consistent accuracy while Frank struggles with mounting pressure. His custom equipment should provide significant advantages, but equipment cannot compensate for nervous tension that affects breathing, trigger control, and mental focus. Margaret's second shot produces another 9, creating a grouping that demonstrates consistency rather than accidental accuracy. Frank's second attempt manages to equal his first score, but fails to improve on performance that feels increasingly insufficient. The third shot sequence reveals the growing gap between theoretical knowledge and practical application under pressure. Margaret's methodical approach continues producing consistent results, while Frank's mounting frustration begins affecting his technique in subtle but measurable ways. By the fourth shot, the outcome has become clear to everyone present, except Frank himself, who continues fighting against reality with the desperation of someone whose identity depends on maintaining superiority that no longer exists. His expensive rifle and years of weekend practice cannot overcome the fundamental difference between hobby enthusiasm and genuine expertise. Margaret's final shot completes a grouping that would impress professional marksmen and certainly exceeds anything the observers expected when this confrontation began. Her 5-shot total demonstrates not just exceptional marksmanship, but the kind of consistency that separates true skill from fortunate accidents. Frank Jensen's final score, while respectable by normal standards, falls short of the performance needed to maintain his challenge credibility. His expensive equipment and proclaimed expertise have been systematically dismantled by someone who appeared completely out of place in his carefully constructed domain. The silence that follows the completion of shooting carries weight that extends beyond simple scorekeeping. This silence encompasses shattered assumptions, challenged hierarchies, and the uncomfortable recognition that appearances can be devastatingly misleading. Margaret sets her rifle aside with the same calm precision that has characterized her entire performance. She removes her safety equipment with methodical care, then faces an audience that has witnessed something that challenges their fundamental understanding of competence and credibility. Tommy Rodriguez, Frank Jensen, and Mike Patterson stand frozen in postures that reflect their psychological state. They'd approached this encounter with confidence born from years of unchallenged dominance in their chosen domain. They'd expected to deliver education to someone who clearly didn't belong in their exclusive circle. Instead, they've received education themselves, administered with clinical precision by someone who appears to have wandered into their world from an entirely different universe. Their assumptions about strength, skill, and belonging have been systematically destroyed by someone they'd dismissed before she ever fired a shot. Bull Morrison approaches Margaret with the expression of someone who's discovered that his understanding of his own business was incomplete. Range management has exposed him to exceptional shooters before, but they usually arrived wearing the unofficial uniform of serious marksmen and carrying equipment that announced their intentions. Margaret Thompson had arrived looking like someone's librarian aunt and proceeded to deliver shooting that would impress Olympic competitors. The disconnect between appearance and performance represents something he's never encountered in 2 decades of professional experience. "Ma'am, I have to ask." Bull begins with the hesitation of someone approaching dangerous territory. "Where exactly did you learn to shoot like that?" The question hangs in the air like smoke after gunfire, carrying implications that extend far beyond casual curiosity. Everyone present understands that Margaret's performance suggests training and experience that exists somewhere in her background, hidden beneath layers of deliberate ordinariness. Margaret's response when it comes will either satisfy their curiosity or deepen the mystery that has transformed their predictable afternoon into something that none of them will ever forget. The answer will reveal whether they've witnessed exceptional natural talent or something more complex that challenges everything they thought they knew about the quiet woman who just redefined their understanding of marksmanship excellence. But, for now, the question hangs unanswered in air heavy with gun smoke and shattered expectations, waiting for Margaret Thompson to decide exactly how much truth she's prepared to reveal to an audience that has already seen more than they bargained. Four. The afternoon light continues streaming through range windows, illuminating dust motes that dance like secrets waiting to be discovered. The American flags hang motionless as witnesses to a transformation that has changed everything while appearing to change nothing at all. Margaret Thompson remains exactly who she appeared to be when she first emerged from her modest Honda Civic, middle-aged librarian in sensible shoes and conservative cardigan, unremarkable in every visible way except for the smoking rifle in her hands and the perfect targets that bear witness to capabilities that exist somewhere in the shadows of her carefully constructed ordinary life. Margaret's fingers trace the rim of her thermos cap with deliberate slowness, the gesture of someone deciding how much truth a moment can handle. The question about her shooting background hangs in the air like incense, heavy with implications that none of the observers are prepared to fully comprehend. "I suppose there's no harm in telling you," Margaret says finally, her voice carrying the weight of memories that have been carefully locked away. "I learned to shoot in the Army 27 years ago." The admission lands like a depth charge in calm water, sending ripples of understanding and confusion through the assembled crowd. Tommy Rodriguez feels his mouth fall open despite his best efforts to maintain composure. Frank Jensen's custom rifle suddenly feels heavier in his hands, as if it's gained pounds along with his growing comprehension of how thoroughly he's been outclassed. Bull Morrison leans forward with the intensity of someone sensing that this revelation represents only the beginning of a much larger story. 27 years places Margaret's service during an era when women's roles in the military were severely restricted, when female soldiers were largely excluded from combat positions and specialized training that would produce the kind of marksmanship he's just witnessed. "Army, huh?" Bull's response comes carefully measured, the tone of someone who knows enough about military service to recognize when there's more to discover. "What was your specialty?" Margaret takes a sip from her thermos before answering, the pause giving weight to words that will reshape everything the observers think they understand about quiet competence and hidden capabilities. When she speaks again, her voice carries the authority of someone who's earned the right to be heard on subjects that most people only know from movies. "Military police initially. But I cross-trained into specialized roles when opportunities became available." The Army was beginning to expand women's participation in certain areas that had been previously restricted. Her carefully diplomatic language reveals nothing while suggesting everything. Cross-training into specialized roles could mean anything, from administrative advancement to elite combat preparation. The observers find themselves parsing her words like intelligence analysts examining coded communications. Mike Patterson, whose construction management experience has taught him to recognize when people are being deliberately vague about their qualifications, pushes for more specific information with the persistence of someone who suspects he's been dramatically underestimating his opponent. Specialized roles like what, exactly? Military police covers a lot of ground, but it doesn't usually produce the kind of shooting we just witnessed. Margaret's smile carries the patience of someone who's spent decades deflecting questions about experiences that don't translate easily to civilian understanding. Her response comes with the precision of someone who's learned to reveal truth in carefully measured doses. I spent some time with units that required advanced marksmanship training. The details remain classified, but the skills transferred. Well, to civilian applications, as you've observed. The mention of classified details creates a new dimension of speculation among the observers. Classified military operations suggest involvement in activities that exist in shadows, where exceptional shooting skills would be not just useful but potentially life-saving necessities. Frank Jensen, whose weekend warrior credentials suddenly feel embarrassingly inadequate, attempts to regain some measure of credibility through technical knowledge that demonstrates his understanding of military marksmanship traditions. Advanced marksmanship training in the late 90s would have been pretty cutting-edge stuff. Most of the precision shooting techniques we use today were still being developed back then. You must have been part of some pretty elite programs. Margaret's acknowledgement comes with subtle body language changes that suggest Frank's observation has struck closer to sensitive territory than her previous admissions. Her posture shifts almost imperceptibly, shoulders squaring in a way that speaks of muscle memory responding to recognition of professional knowledge. The military was investing heavily in precision shooting capabilities during that period. There were opportunities for qualified personnel to receive training that exceeded standard infantry requirements. I was fortunate to be selected for some of those programs. Her modest phrasing cannot disguise the implications of what she's revealing. Selection for elite military training programs represents achievement that goes far beyond mere competence. Such programs typically recruit from the top percentage of candidates who have already demonstrated exceptional capabilities under demanding conditions. Bull Morrison pieces together fragments of military history with the growing realization that Margaret's presence at his range represents something far more significant than a bored housewife looking for weekend entertainment. Elite military marksmanship programs from the late 90s were preparing soldiers for conflicts that would demand precision shooting under extreme stress. Would these programs have included training for extended range engagements, urban environment shooting, moving target scenarios? Bull's questions reveal his own military background and understanding of specialized training that prepares soldiers for operations that civilian shooters can barely imagine. His voice carries the respect of someone who recognizes genuine expertise when he encounters it. Margaret's response confirms suspicions while raising new questions about the extent of her hidden capabilities. All of those scenarios and more. The training was comprehensive and demanding. We learned to shoot accurately, under conditions that would challenge most civilian marksmen. The casual reference to conditions that would challenge civilian marksmen provides context that helps explain the clinical precision of her range performance. What appeared to be exceptional shooting under controlled circumstances now reveals itself as routine application of skills developed under far more demanding conditions. Tommy Rodriguez, whose insurance adjuster experience has taught him to recognize when people are minimizing significant events, realizes that Margaret's modest descriptions probably represent dramatic understatement of experiences that would qualify as extraordinary by any reasonable measure. When you say demanding conditions, are we talking about basic field training or something more intense? Because what we just saw suggests training that goes way beyond standard military requirements. Margaret's hesitation before answering speaks volumes about memories that she spent years learning to manage carefully. When she responds, her voice carries undertones that suggest experiences involving stakes far higher than range scores or weekend bragging rights. Some of the training involved scenarios that simulated real-world conditions where precision shooting could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. We learned to maintain accuracy regardless of stress, fatigue, environmental conditions, or time pressure. The implications of her admission create a moment of silence as the observers process what they're hearing. Training that simulates life or death scenarios suggests preparation for operations where shooting skills would be applied under conditions that most people can't even imagine. Frank Jensen, whose competitive shooting experience represents the most demanding circumstances he's ever encountered, struggles to comprehend training designed to prepare soldiers for situations where missing targets could result in consequences measured in lives rather than points. That kind of training must have been incredibly intensive. How long were these programs? What was the washout rate? Margaret's answer provides glimpses into a world where physical and mental demands exceed anything the civilian observers have experienced, even in their most challenging moments of recreational shooting or professional pressure. The initial selection process eliminated about 80% of candidates before training even began. The actual program lasted 18 months and had an additional 50% attrition rate. The military invested significant resources in personnel who demonstrated both aptitude and psychological resilience for specialized roles. The statistics she provides paint a picture of elite training that transforms already exceptional soldiers into capabilities that exist at the extreme edges of human performance. 18 months of intensive training with such high attrition rates suggests preparation for missions that would demand absolute precision under unimaginable pressure. Bull Morrison, whose range management experience has exposed him to various levels of shooting competence, realizes that Margaret's casual demonstration of marksmanship represents application of skills that most professional shooters would consider legendary rather than routine. After that kind of training, civilian shooting must seem pretty tame by comparison. No time pressure, no stress factors, perfect environmental conditions. Margaret's response reveals the psychological distance between her current circumstances and the experiences that shaped her extraordinary capabilities. Her voice carries the matter-of-fact tone of someone discussing technical details rather than life-changing experiences. Civilian shooting does offer certain advantages: better equipment, controlled conditions, opportunity to focus purely on technique without external pressures. It allows for precision that might not be possible under field conditions. Her diplomatic comparison between civilian and military shooting provides insight into training that prepared her for circumstances where external pressures could include incoming fire, time constraints measured in seconds, and targets that represented genuine threats rather than paper scoring zones. Mike Patterson, whose leadership experience in construction has taught him to recognize when workers are dealing with stress that affects performance, begins to understand that Margaret's extraordinary composure under pressure represents conditioning that extends far beyond simple marksmanship training. The psychological training must have been as important as the shooting skills. Learning to maintain focus when everything around you is chaos. Margaret's acknowledgement comes with subtle changes in facial expression that suggest memories involving experiences that tested psychological resilience in ways that civilian life rarely demands. Her response provides glimpses into training designed to forge mental toughness that could withstand extreme stress. Psychological preparation was integrated throughout the program. We learned techniques for maintaining focus, controlling breathing, managing stress responses, and making rapid decisions under pressure. The mental aspects were often more challenging than the physical requirements. The revelation that mental training exceeded physical demands provides context for the almost supernatural calm that Margaret has displayed throughout her range performance. Her composure now appears as the product of conditioning designed to maintain effectiveness under conditions that would overwhelm most people. Tommy Rodriguez attempts to process the implications of what he's learning while struggling with the cognitive dissonance between Margaret's appearance and the extraordinary background she's revealing. His voice carries the uncertainty of someone whose understanding of the world has been fundamentally challenged. So after all that training, you just left the military and became a librarian? That seems like a pretty dramatic career change. Margaret's response touches on transitions that many veterans experience when military service ends and civilian life begins. Though few transitions involve moving from elite special operations to managing library collections and helping patrons find romance novels. Military service doesn't last forever, and civilian careers offer different kinds of fulfillment. I discovered that I enjoyed helping people access information and resources. The skills transferred better than you might expect. Her explanation provides logical justification for career changes, while carefully avoiding details about circumstances that might have influenced her transition from military service to civilian life. The observers sense additional layers of story that remain unexplored. Frank Jensen, whose curiosity about Margaret's background has moved beyond simple confusion to genuine fascination, pushes for information about the specific military units that would have provided such exceptional training during the late 90s. Were you with Special Forces? Delta? Some kind of classified unit that doesn't appear in normal military records? Margaret's response comes with body language changes that suggest Frank's questions are approaching territory that she spent years learning to navigate carefully. Her voice maintains its calm professionalism while revealing nothing that could compromise information that remains sensitive decades later. Some assignments involved units whose operations were classified above levels that permit detailed discussion. I can say that the training prepared personnel for missions that required exceptional precision under demanding circumstances. The diplomatic non-answer confirms that Margaret's military service involved activities that exist in shadows, where exceptional shooting skills would be applied under conditions that civilian marksmen can barely comprehend. Her presence at a suburban shooting range now appears as extraordinary as discovering a professional race car driver participating in driver's education classes. Bull Morrison realizes that his range has become the setting for a revelation that challenges everything the observers thought they understood about competence, capability, and the assumptions they make about people based on appearance and civilian occupation. Ma'am, with respect, what you've demonstrated today goes way beyond anything we see from even our most experienced shooters. You're operating at a level that suggests training and experience that most of us can't even imagine. Margaret's response acknowledges the recognition, while maintaining the modest demeanor that has characterized her throughout this encounter. Her voice carries the authority of someone who's earned the right to speak about exceptional performance, without needing to boast about capabilities that speak for themselves. I appreciate the recognition, but I want to emphasize that many people received similar training during that era. The military produced numerous personnel with comparable capabilities. I'm not unique in that regard. Her modest deflection of praise while acknowledging the existence of others with similar backgrounds provides context for understanding that Margaret represents one example of capabilities that exist throughout the veteran community, often hidden beneath civilian occupations that provide no indication of extraordinary training and experience. The afternoon light has shifted during the extended conversation, casting longer shadows through the range windows and creating an atmosphere that seems appropriate for revelations that have transformed a simple shooting demonstration into something approaching legend. Frank Jensen, Tommy Rodriguez, and Mike Patterson stand in postures that reflect their psychological transformation from confident insiders to humbled observers who've discovered that their understanding of expertise was dramatically incomplete. Margaret Thompson, middle-aged librarian in sensible shoes and conservative cardigan, has revealed herself as something far more complex than her appearance suggested. The disconnect between her civilian persona and military background represents a reminder that extraordinary capabilities often exist in places where they're least expected. The targets downrange bear witness to shooting that will be discussed and remembered long after the participants have left the range. Perfect groupings that demonstrate precision achievable only through training that transforms exceptional individuals into capabilities that exist at the extremes of human performance. Bull Morrison approaches the conclusion of this extraordinary afternoon with the realization that his range has hosted something that transcends normal recreational shooting. Margaret's demonstration has provided education about excellence that none of the observers anticipated when she first emerged from her modest Honda Civic. The revelation of her military background explains the exceptional shooting while raising new questions about the experiences that shaped her extraordinary capabilities. Her transition from elite military service to civilian life represents a journey that few people could comprehend, involving adjustments that extend far beyond simple career changes. Margaret begins preparing to leave with the same methodical precision that has characterized her entire visit. Her equipment is organized and secured with automatic efficiency that speaks of habits developed through years of training where attention to detail could mean the difference between success and disaster. The observers watch her preparations with the fascination of people who've discovered that their neighbor is actually a retired astronaut or former Olympic athlete. The ordinary afternoon has been transformed into something that will be retold and remembered as the day they learned that extraordinary capabilities can exist beneath the most unremarkable exteriors. But questions remain about the specific nature of Margaret's military service, the missions that required such exceptional training, and the circumstances that led her from elite special operations to civilian life in a small town where her extraordinary capabilities remained hidden until this afternoon. Those answers await in conversations yet to come, in revelations that will complete the picture of who Margaret Thompson really is beneath the carefully constructed ordinary exterior that conceals one of the most remarkable individuals ever to quo. Visit the Riverside County Gun Range. Margaret closes her thermos with the practiced efficiency of someone who's performed this routine countless times across decades of quiet discipline. The gesture marks the end of an afternoon that has fundamentally altered the dynamics of the Riverside County Gun Range, though she appears unaware of the transformation her presence has created. The silence that follows her revelation carries weight that none of the observers expected when they first noticed her modest Honda Civic in the parking lot. This isn't the uncomfortable quiet of social awkwardness or the tense pause before conflict. This is the profound silence that follows understanding, the moment when assumptions crumble and new realities take their place. Tommy Rodriguez finds himself staring at his own rifle with fresh perspective, seeing his weekend hobby through eyes that now understand the difference between recreational shooting and skills forged in circumstances where accuracy meant survival. His $20 bet feels insignificant compared to the education he's received about humility and the danger of judging capabilities by appearances. Frank Jensen's expensive custom rifle suddenly seems less impressive when measured against performance achieved with standard rental equipment by someone who learned marksmanship under conditions he can barely imagine. His bronze star from weekend competitions appears trivial next to training that prepared soldiers for missions where missing targets could cost lives. Mike Patterson, whose construction management experience taught him to recognize expertise when he encountered it, realizes he's witnessed something that transcends normal categories of skill and competence. Margaret's demonstration represents capabilities that exist in a different universe from anything his civilian experience prepared him to recognize. Bull Morrison approaches Margaret with the respectful demeanor of someone who's discovered that his understanding of his own business was incomplete. 23 years of range management exposed him to various levels of shooting competence, but nothing prepared him for encountering someone whose capabilities exist at the extreme edges of human performance. "Ma'am, I want you to know that you're welcome here anytime. In fact, I'd be honored if you'd consider this range your home away from home. Someone with your background and capabilities could teach us all something about what real marksmanship looks like." Margaret's response carries the grace of someone who's learned to accept recognition without letting it change her fundamental approach to life. Her voice maintains the modest tone that has characterized her throughout this extraordinary afternoon. "I appreciate the invitation, and I may take you up on it occasionally. It's pleasant to have access to a well-maintained facility where I can practice without drawing attention or creating complications. Her mention of avoiding attention suggests that this afternoon's demonstration represents an exception to her normal preference for remaining invisible. The implications raise questions about other circumstances where her extraordinary capabilities might have been revealed to unsuspecting audiences. Tommy Rodriguez, whose worldview has been systematically dismantled over the past hour, approaches Margaret with the hesitant respect of someone who's realized he's been swimming in the shallow end while assuming he understood the ocean. Margaret, I owe you an apology. When you first arrived, I made assumptions that were completely wrong. I judged you based on appearance instead of giving you the respect every person deserves. That was my mistake, and I'm sorry. His apology carries genuine remorse that extends beyond simple embarrassment about being wrong. Tommy's recognition of his prejudicial assumptions represents personal growth that wouldn't have occurred without Margaret's patient demonstration of how thoroughly appearances can mislead. Margaret's acceptance of his apology reveals the character that enabled her to maintain composure throughout his earlier dismissive treatment. Her response focuses on moving forward rather than dwelling on past misunderstandings. Apology accepted, Tommy. We all make quick judgments sometimes. The important thing is being willing to adjust our understanding when new information becomes available. You've done that today, which says something positive about your character. Her gracious response transforms what could have been a moment of humiliation into an opportunity for redemption. Tommy's relief is visible as he realizes that Margaret holds no grudges for his earlier behavior. Frank Jensen struggles with an apology that must acknowledge not just wrong assumptions, but the deliberate cruelty of his challenge designed to embarrass someone he perceived as weak and vulnerable. His voice carries the weight of someone confronting his own capacity for casual meanness. Margaret, I was worse than wrong. I was deliberately trying to humiliate you because I thought you didn't belong here. I used my knowledge and experience as weapons to make you feel small and unwelcome. That's inexcusable, and I'm deeply sorry. His admission requires moral courage that demonstrates growth from the experience. Frank's willingness to acknowledge deliberate cruelty rather than hiding behind claims of innocent mistake represents the kind of self-examination that genuine education demands. Margaret's response to Frank's more serious transgression reveals depths of character that explain how she survived elite military training and whatever followed. Her voice carries the authority of someone who's faced genuine adversity and learned to distinguish between actual threats and mere inconvenience. Frank, you're forgiven. Everyone deserves the chance to learn and grow from their mistakes. What matters now is how you choose to treat people going forward. Today's experience could make you more careful about assumptions, or it could make you bitter about being wrong. The choice is yours. Her response transforms Frank's moment of shame into an opportunity for positive change. The wisdom of her word suggests experience with forgiveness as a tool for healing rather than weakness disguised as virtue. Mike Patterson, whose leadership experience in construction taught him to recognize teachable moments, approaches Margaret with the respectful curiosity of someone who understands that he's in the presence of exceptional knowledge that could benefit everyone present. Margaret, would you be willing to share some insights about shooting technique? Not classified information, obviously, but general principles that might help civilian shooters improve their performance? His request acknowledges her expertise, while respecting boundaries around sensitive information. Mike's approach demonstrates the kind of leadership that creates learning opportunities rather than defensive posturing. Margaret considers his request with the analytical approach she's displayed throughout the afternoon. Her response reveals willingness to share knowledge, while maintaining appropriate discretion about specific training methods that might remain sensitive. I'd be happy to discuss general principles that apply to civilian shooting, breathing control, trigger management, mental focus techniques. Most of the fundamentals translate well to recreational marksmanship, though obviously the stress inoculation aspects wouldn't be relevant or appropriate. Her offer to share knowledge transforms the afternoon from a demonstration of superior skill into an educational opportunity that could benefit everyone present. The observers realize they're being offered access to training insights that normally remain locked away in classified military programs. Bull Morrison recognizes the extraordinary nature of Margaret's offer and the opportunity it represents for his range to become something more than a weekend retreat for casual enthusiasts. His voice carries the excitement of someone who's discovered unexpected treasure. Margaret, if you'd be willing to conduct some informal instruction sessions, I think there would be significant interest from our regular customers. Nothing formal or commercial, just sharing knowledge among shooting enthusiasts who want to improve their skills. Margaret's consideration of his proposal suggests willingness to step outside her normal preference for invisibility if it serves a constructive purpose. Her response reveals thinking shaped by a lifetime of service to others. I could consider occasional informal sessions focused on civilian applications of military marksmanship principles. It might be useful for people to understand that exceptional shooting isn't magic or natural talent. It's the result of proper training, consistent practice, and disciplined mental approach. Her offer demystifies her extraordinary performance, while providing hope that others could develop comparable skills through proper instruction and dedicated effort. The revelation that her capabilities result from training rather than innate gifts makes her achievements seem both more impressive and more attainable. The late afternoon sun casts longer shadows through the range windows as Margaret prepares for departure. Her movements retain the methodical precision that has characterized her entire visit. But now the observers understand that this efficiency represents ingrained habits developed through training that demanded perfection under conditions they can barely imagine. Tommy Rodriguez, Frank Jensen, and Mike Patterson watch her preparations with the fascination of people who've discovered that their neighbor is actually a retired astronaut or former Olympic champion. The ordinary afternoon has been transformed into something that will be retold and remembered as the day they learned about the extraordinary capabilities that can exist beneath unremarkable exteriors. Margaret's departure preparations include organizing her empty thermos and modest purse with the same attention to detail she applied to her shooting equipment. Every motion serves a purpose, every gesture demonstrates efficiency learned through years of training where carelessness could have serious consequences. Bull Morrison accompanies her toward the exit with the respectful demeanor of someone escorting visiting royalty rather than a casual range customer. His voice carries genuine appreciation for the education she's provided about excellence and the danger of superficial judgments. Margaret, thank you for an afternoon that's reminded all of us about the importance of keeping an open mind. You've taught us more than marksmanship techniques. You've shown us something about character and grace under pressure. Margaret's response reveals the modest perspective that has enabled her to transition from elite military service to civilian life without losing the qualities that made her exceptional in the first place. Her voice carries the wisdom of someone who's learned to measure success by service rather than recognition. Thank you for providing a welcoming environment once you got past initial impressions. Good shooting facilities are valuable community resources, and you've created something that served people well. Her compliment to Bull's range management acknowledges his professionalism, while gently noting the evolution of welcome from skeptical tolerance to genuine respect. The diplomatic observation demonstrates social skills that complement her technical capabilities. The parking lot conversation continues as Margaret reaches her modest Honda Civic, the same vehicle that seemed so out of place among the trucks and motorcycles when she first arrived. Now her car appears as appropriate transportation for someone who values function over appearance and substance over style. Frank Jensen approaches with final thoughts that represent his attempt to process the afternoon's education about assumptions and reality. His voice carries the uncertainty of someone whose worldview has been fundamentally altered by unexpected encounter with genuine excellence. Margaret, I keep thinking about how wrong we were about you. It makes me wonder how many other people we encounter every day who have extraordinary backgrounds that we never discover because we make quick judgments based on surface appearances. His observation demonstrates the broader lesson that Margaret's demonstration has provided about the danger of assuming that external appearance accurately reflects internal capabilities or life experiences. The insight suggests lasting impact from the afternoon's education. Margaret's response reveals thinking shaped by years of experience with people who make quick judgments about her capabilities based on her deliberately unremarkable presentation. Her voice carries the patience of someone who's learned to accept misunderstanding as the price of privacy. Everyone carries stories and experiences that aren't visible from the outside. Military veterans, teachers, parents, workers in every field. Exceptional capabilities and remarkable experiences exist everywhere, often hidden behind ordinary exteriors. Today was unusual because circumstances led to demonstration rather than concealment. Her wisdom about hidden capabilities provides context for understanding that her afternoon's revelation represents just one example of the extraordinary experiences and abilities that exist throughout society, usually remain invisible beneath surface appearances that reveal nothing about depth. The conversation winds down as Margaret settles into her driver's seat with movements that retain the efficiency and purpose that have characterized her entire visit. The modest car interior appears exactly as unremarkable as everything else. About her external presentation, concealing capabilities that have redefined the observer's understanding of expertise. Tommy Rodriguez, Frank Jensen, and Mike Patterson watch her departure with expressions that reflect their psychological transformation from confident insiders to humbled students who've received education about excellence that extends far beyond marksmanship techniques. Margaret's Honda Civic disappears into traffic with the same anonymity that brought her to the range hours earlier. To passing motorists, she appears as nothing more than another middle-aged woman running weekend errands. Her extraordinary capabilities invisible beneath deliberate ordinariness. The range falls quiet except for the normal sounds of weekend shooting as other customers continue their recreational activities, unaware of the extraordinary demonstration that has just concluded. The targets bearing Margaret's perfect groupings remain as evidence that something remarkable occurred, though their significance will fade as new shooters replace them with fresh paper. Bull Morrison returns to his office with thoughts focused on the educational opportunity that Margaret's offer represents for his facility and customers. The chance to provide access to elite military marksmanship training, even in civilian application, could transform his range from recreational facility into genuine center of excellence. Tommy Rodriguez, Frank Jensen, and Mike Patterson gather their equipment with conversation focused on processing the afternoon's education about assumptions, capabilities, and the extraordinary experiences that can exist beneath ordinary appearances. Their weekend shooting routine has been permanently altered by encounter with someone whose skills exist in a different universe from recreational marksmanship. The electronic scoring system continues its normal operations, processing impacts from ordinary shooters whose performance appears impressive until measured against the standard that Margaret Thompson established during her brief visit. Her perfect scores will be discussed and remembered long after the details of normal range activities have been forgotten. But perhaps the most lasting impact of Margaret's afternoon demonstration lies in the lesson about judging capabilities by appearances, about recognizing that extraordinary experiences and abilities exist throughout society, often hidden beneath surface presentations that reveal nothing about depth. The Riverside County Gun Range closes that evening with staff and customers who've been reminded that excellence can appear anywhere, at any time, wearing any disguise. Margaret Thompson's visit has provided education that extends far beyond marksmanship techniques into territory involving character, humility, and the wisdom of keeping an open mind about the capabilities of quiet people who ask for nothing more than the chance to practice their skills in peace. Her legacy lives on in changed attitudes and expanded understanding about the nature of true expertise, carried forward by people who learned that sometimes the most remarkable individuals are the ones who seem most ordinary until circumstances reveal the extraordinary capabilities that exist beneath unremarkable exteriors. The lesson continues beyond the range in conversations with friends and family, in encounters with other quiet people whose backgrounds might contain remarkable stories, in moments of choice between quick judgment and patient observation that could reveal unexpected depth. Margaret Thompson returned to her ordinary life as Millbrook's librarian, her extraordinary afternoon remaining largely invisible to a community that continues to see only what she chooses to reveal. But somewhere in the shadows of her daily routine, the skills remain sharp and ready, maintained through discipline that never falters and training that never truly ends. 6 months later, the Riverside County Gun Range operates under an atmosphere that would be unrecognizable to anyone who knew it before Margaret Thompson's transformative visit. The changes extend far beyond simple improvements to equipment or facilities. They represent a fundamental shift in culture that has touched every aspect of how the range functions and how its patrons interact with each other. Bull Morrison surveys his domain from behind the front desk with satisfaction that goes deeper than simple business success. The range has become something more than a weekend retreat for recreational shooters. It has evolved into a genuine center of learning where respect for both firearms and fellow shooters has replaced the casual arrogance that once characterized weekend gatherings. The transformation began with Margaret's monthly instruction sessions, informal gatherings where she shared civilian applications of military marksmanship principles with anyone interested in learning. These sessions attracted shooters from across 3 counties, drawn by word-of-mouth reports about a librarian whose teaching methods produced dramatic improvements in accuracy and consistency. Margaret's approach to instruction reflected the same methodical precision that characterized her shooting. She focused on fundamentals that most recreational shooters overlooked or performed incorrectly. Breathing techniques borrowed from military training, mental focus exercises designed to maintain concentration under pressure, equipment setup procedures that maximized accuracy potential. But perhaps most importantly, she taught by example, about respect for fellow shooters regardless of their background or apparent skill level. Her patient treatment of beginners and humble interactions with experienced marksmen created an atmosphere where learning took precedence over ego and mutual support replaced competitive posturing. Tommy Rodriguez has become one of Margaret's most dedicated students, his insurance adjuster precision translating well to marksmanship fundamentals. Once he learned to apply military-derived techniques to civilian shooting, his scores have improved dramatically, but more significantly, his approach to fellow shooters reflects lessons about humility and respect that extend far beyond the range. Frank Jensen underwent perhaps the most dramatic transformation among the regular patrons. His expensive equipment remains impressive, but he no longer treats it as evidence of superiority over shooters with more modest gear. Margaret's demonstration that exceptional performance could be achieved with standard rental equipment fundamentally altered his understanding of what truly matters in marksmanship. The afternoon instruction sessions have become legendary among regional shooting enthusiasts. Margaret's reputation has spread through networks of hunters, competitive shooters, and military veterans who recognize the extraordinary nature of what she offers. Yet she maintains the same modest demeanor that characterized her first visit, treating her teaching role as service rather than performance. Mike Patterson discovered that construction management skills translated surprisingly well to range leadership responsibilities. His practical experience with training workers and maintaining safety standards made him a natural assistant during Margaret's instruction sessions. He coordinates logistics and helps newer shooters while Margaret focuses on advanced technique. Instruction. The range's reputation has attracted attention from law enforcement agencies seeking advanced training for their personnel. Several police departments now send officers for specialized instruction that Margaret provides on weekday mornings when civilian traffic remains light. Her military background and teaching abilities provide training opportunities that smaller agencies could never afford through commercial programs. Margaret's influence extends beyond technical instruction into the realm of community building around shared values of safety, respect, and continuous improvement. The range has become a place where differences in background, politics, or social status matter less than commitment to responsible firearms handling and mutual support for fellow shooters. The monthly sessions follow patterns established during Margaret's first informal demonstration. She begins with safety reminders that emphasize both technical protocols and respectful treatment of other range users. Her military background provides credibility that ensures even experienced shooters pay attention to fundamentals they might otherwise consider beneath their notice. Individual instruction reveals Margaret's remarkable ability to diagnose shooting problems and prescribe solutions that address root causes rather than symptoms. She observes stance, breathing, trigger control, and mental approach with analytical precision that identifies issues other instructors might miss. Her corrections often focus on subtle adjustments that produce dramatic improvements. Group discussions during breaks provide opportunities for shooters to share experiences and learn from each other under Margaret's guidance. These conversations often reveal that problems one shooter considers unique are actually common challenges that others have overcome through techniques Margaret can teach or adapt from military training. The afternoon Margaret discovered young Sarah Williams crying in the parking lot became another defining moment in the range's evolution. The 16-year-old had been mocked by older shooters during a youth competition, her modest equipment and nervous demeanor making her an easy target for casual cruelty that reminded Margaret of her own initial reception. Margaret's intervention was swift and decisive. She invited Sarah to join her next instruction session as a special guest, providing one-on-one coaching that transformed the teenager's shooting and confidence simultaneously. Sarah's subsequent performance in regional competitions has made her something of a local celebrity, but more importantly, her experience established the range as a place where young shooters could learn without fear of ridicule. The ripple effects of Margaret's influence continue expanding throughout the regional shooting community. Other ranges have adopted similar approaches to instruction and community building, recognizing that Margaret's methods produce not just better shooters, but more responsible citizens who understand firearms as tools requiring respect rather than toys for ego gratification. Bull Morrison's business has grown substantially, but he measures success in terms of community impact rather than simple revenue increases. The range hosts charity events for veteran organizations, provides discounted training for single mothers interested in home protection, and offers free safety courses for new gun owners who might otherwise receive no formal instruction. Margaret's personal story has become part of range folklore, though she continues to deflect attention from her military background toward present-day teaching responsibilities. New visitors often arrive hoping to witness legendary shooting demonstrations, but they quickly discover that Margaret's true gift lies in her ability to help others discover capabilities they didn't know they possessed. The target wall in Bull's office displays examples of exceptional shooting achieved by Margaret's students rather than her own perfect groupings. Each target represents someone who overcame personal limitations through proper instruction and patient practice. Margaret insists that student achievements provide better motivation than instructor demonstrations. Frank Jensen has become Margaret's unofficial assistant during evening sessions, His transformation from skeptical regular to dedicated supporter, representing one of the range's most powerful success stories. His willingness to acknowledge past mistakes and embrace new learning has inspired other experienced shooters to approach instruction with open minds rather than defensive pride. The range's influence extends into local schools through safety education programs that Margaret helps coordinate with teachers and administrators. These presentations focus on responsible attitudes toward firearms rather than technical instruction, emphasizing respect for tools that require mature judgment and careful handling. Margaret's teaching philosophy emphasizes that exceptional marksmanship results from discipline rather than natural talent, practice rather than expensive equipment, and mental preparation rather than physical strength. These principles apply to life beyond shooting, creating lessons about persistence, humility, and respect for others that students carry into their daily activities. The afternoon light streaming through range windows continues to illuminate dust motes that dance like possibilities waiting to be discovered. New shooters arrive each weekend with expectations shaped by Margaret's reputation, but they quickly learn that her true gift lies in helping them discover their own potential, rather than impressing them with superior performance. Tommy Rodriguez often reflects on the afternoon that changed his understanding of assumptions and appearances. His story about the librarian who redefined his concept of expertise has become a cautionary tale he shares with friends and colleagues about the danger of judging people based on superficial characteristics. Margaret continues her work at the Millbrook Public Library with the same dedication she brings to range instruction. Patrons seeking assistance with research projects have no idea that their helpful librarian possesses marksmanship skills that would impress Olympic competitors. Her two worlds remain largely separate, connected only by shared values of service and continuous learning. The modest Honda Civic continues making weekend trips to the range, carrying equipment that reflects Margaret's practical approach to both firearms and life. Her thermos of tea remains a constant companion, providing familiar comfort during instruction sessions, where she transforms ordinary shooters into marksmen who understand the difference between hitting targets and truly mastering their craft. The electronic scoring system has recorded thousands of improved performances since Margaret began teaching, documenting progress that extends far beyond simple score improvements. Students learn to approach challenges with systematic preparation, to maintain focus under pressure, and to treat setbacks as learning opportunities rather than personal failures. Margaret's legacy lives in changed attitudes and expanded capabilities that continue rippling outward through families and communities, where her students apply lessons learned at the range to challenges encountered in daily life. The principles of disciplined preparation, respectful treatment of others, and persistent effort toward improvement transcend marksmanship into territory involving character development and personal growth. The Riverside County Gun Range closes each evening with staff and patrons who understand that they participate in something larger than recreational shooting. They belong to a community built around shared values of safety, respect, and mutual support for fellow citizens committed to responsible firearms ownership and continuous self-improvement. Margaret Thompson drives home through traffic where her extraordinary capabilities remain invisible to passing motorists who see only another middle-aged woman completing weekend errands. Her influence continues expanding through students who carry forward lessons about excellence achieved through disciplined effort rather than natural gifts. The range opens each morning with renewed commitment to values that Margaret established through patient example rather than dramatic demonstration. Her quiet transformation of an entire shooting community proves that lasting change often comes through persistent service rather than spectacular performance. Bull Morrison begins each day knowing that his facility serves purposes that extend far beyond providing entertainment for weekend warriors. The range has become a place where ordinary people discover extraordinary capabilities, where differences disappear in shared commitment to improvement, and where respect for others takes precedence over personal ego. The targets that bear witness to Margaret's perfect shooting have long since been replaced, but the lessons they represented continue influencing every aspect of range operations. Excellence achieved through proper preparation, respect for both equipment and fellow shooters, and understanding that true marksmanship begins with disciplined mental approach rather than expensive gear. Margaret's story reminds everyone who encounters it that exceptional capabilities can exist anywhere, concealed beneath ordinary appearances and revealed only when circumstances create opportunities for demonstration. Her legacy encouraged vigilance for hidden depth in unexpected places and patience with people whose backgrounds might contain remarkable experiences waiting to be discovered. The sun sets over the Riverside County Gun Range with golden light that illuminates a community transformed by one afternoon when assumptions met reality and lost decisively. Margaret Thompson's influence continues growing through each student who learns to see past surface appearances, to approach challenges with systematic preparation, and to treat others with respect regardless of their apparent credentials or social status. Her quiet revolution proves that lasting change often comes through service rather than spectacle, through patient teaching rather than dramatic performance, and through daily commitment to excellence rather than occasional displays of superior capability. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.